That mule is completely useless, they said, until the pregnant woman on the ranch discovered the real reason. Let me know what you think of this story by rating it from 0 to 10 in the comments. And tell me what city you are watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story, and I want to get to know you better. So please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. I couldn't sleep that night. The biting cold cut through the wooden frame of the house like a blade, and the wind rattled the window gaps with that hollow sound only those who live in the middle of nowhere truly understand. It was 2 in the morning when I heard the crying. It wasn't a child. It was Sarah. I've been working at the Stonebridge Ranch for 20 years. 20 years of harsh sun on my face, red dust clinging to my clothes, and the heavy silence of the Montana plains keeping me company. When I married Sarah, I thought the loneliness would fade away, and it did, for a while. But living on a ranch 30 miles from the nearest town, with dirt roads and barely any cell service, means living in a place where the whole world forgets you exist. Sarah was kneeling in the dirt aisle between the stalls, her arms wrapped around Daisy's neck. Daisy was the oldest brown mule on the ranch, the one everyone called useless, the one Carter, our foreman, was planning to put down by the end of the week. "Matt, she's panting hard," Sarah said, her voice choking up. "I think she's pregnant." I looked at the mule. I looked at my wife. 8 months pregnant, swollen feet, her eyes shining even in the dark. She knew things. She used to be a vet tech before she left everything behind to come out here with me. And if she thought Daisy was pregnant, she was. "Don't say a word to Carter," I told her. "He'll put her down before even confirming it." Carter was the kind of man who measured the world in cold, hard numbers. Yields, weights, profit margins. He ran the ranch with a strictness that pushed even old Mr. Harrison, the owner, to the sidelines. To Carter, anything that didn't serve a clear purpose had to go. And Daisy, in his mind, had stopped being useful a long time ago. But there was another problem. Sarah was starting to fall into that same category. Over the following days, she started having severe leg pains and high blood pressure. The town doctor, whom she barely managed to reach on a choppy phone call, ordered strict bed rest. But bed rest is a myth when you live on a working ranch. I would leave before sunrise and come back long after dark, and she would stay there, all alone with the chickens, the howling wind, and Daisy grazing near the porch. It was on a bone-dry September afternoon, with the ground cracking from the drought, that Carter called everyone for a meeting. He stood tall, speaking with a dead serious tone, carrying himself like a retired military man, which he never was. "I'm making cuts on the unproductive livestock," he announced. "The brown mule goes this Saturday." Sarah heard him from the kitchen window. I saw her knuckles turn white as she gripped the wooden edge of the sink. She didn't say a word, but I knew exactly what was running through her head. The very next day, she tried to prove Daisy still had worth. She put a light lead rope on her and guided the mule toward the trail by the lower pasture, wanting to show the animal could still walk and carry her weight. But the ground was covered in loose river rocks, and Sarah, heavy with her 8-month belly, stumbled. She fell on her side. It wasn't a hard fall, but Carter saw it, and that was when everything shifted. He started looking at her differently, not with concern, but with deep suspicion. As if Sarah was creating a liability he couldn't just fix with a spreadsheet. "That woman is getting way too attached to that mule," he told me a couple of days later, standing in the barn aisle. "You need to get that under control, Matt." I swallowed hard and said nothing. Carter held too much power out here, and I had way too many secrets to risk my neck. Because before I was a ranch hand, I was something else entirely. I spent 10 years as a combat medic. Conflict zones, remote disaster areas, places where death was just part of the daily routine and you had to decide in a split second who got to live. That is, until the day I couldn't save 2 of my own guys. They died right in front of me and I just froze. I completely shut down. I dropped everything, changed my name on some off-the-books papers, and ended up out here, where nobody asks where you came from. All that matters is if you can handle the scorching sun and don't complain about the back-breaking work. But Martha, the ranch cook, was starting to notice things. She saw the way I handled injured livestock, how my bandages were always wrapped perfectly, better than anyone else's, how my hands moved way too fast for a guy who was only supposed to be fixing fences and herding cattle. "You used to be a doctor, didn't you?" she asked me quietly one afternoon. I didn't confirm it, but I didn't deny it either, and somehow that made its way to Carter's ears. By the second week, Daisy went into labor, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Sarah called me in a sheer panic at 2 in the morning, but the line went dead before she could even finish her sentence. I sprinted to the barn. She was already there, alone, her hands shaking but determined. She delivered that foal just the way she had learned years ago. The little guy was born alive, tiny, soaking wet, taking shallow, struggling breaths. But Sarah collapsed right after. Her blood pressure spiked. She broke out in a cold sweat, her heart racing out of control. I stabilized her. I did everything I knew how to do, everything I had tried so desperately to forget. And in that exact moment, Martha, who had woken up from the commotion, saw the whole thing from the barn doors. "You're hiding a whole lot of things, Matt," she whispered. The next day, Carter went through the bunkhouse. He rummaged through my personal footlocker and found my old IDs. He took everything straight to old Mr. Harrison and spun a twisted version of the truth. He told him I had lied to get onto the ranch, that I was probably a dangerous guy on the run from the law. Harrison called me into his office. It was a long, painful conversation. I told him everything, no hiding, no cheap excuses. I told him about my deployments, the brothers I lost, and the crushing guilt that dragged me out to the middle of nowhere. Harrison just listened in heavy silence, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. And then the rains came. The first big storm of the season, violent and deafening. The main dirt road, already compromised by the summer wildfires, turned into a massive mudslide. The ranch was completely cut off. No way out, no cell service, nothing. And it was on that very night that Sarah's contractions started. I was standing face to face with everything I had tried to leave behind, and she was right there in front of me, looking at me with those bright eyes, trusting me in a way nobody else ever had. "I know exactly who you are," she said, squeezing my hand tight. "It's okay to be him right now." The labor was brutally long and exhausting. Martha stayed right by my side. Frank, Mia, and Austin, all the hands, were wide awake, pacing outside on the porch. Carter just stood in a corner, completely clueless, not knowing what to do. He had no orders to bark, no flaws to point out. The baby was finally born just as the sun started painting the morning sky a bright orange. Healthy, crying with a strong set of lungs. Sarah cried too. I held that tiny weight in my hands and felt something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't guilt anymore, it was pure life. Mr. Harrison walked into the bedroom, took one look at the scene, and immediately understood everything. He turned to Carter and said with dead calm in his voice, "You're going to hand me your keys right now." Carter packed up and left the ranch that very same day. No allies holding him back, his authority completely stripped away. The ranch hands watched him drive off, and nobody said a single word. They didn't have to. Daisy and her little foal were grazing out in the pasture as his truck disappeared into the dust. I watched from a distance, standing by the window with my newborn son resting in Sarah's arms. I was going to get back to work soon. I was going to return to my routine. But something fundamental had changed forever. The mule everyone swore was entirely useless brought new life into the world on one of the hardest nights this ranch had ever seen. And the man everyone assumed was just another drifter saved 2 lives with the very hands he had tried to bury in the dirt. What looked like weakness was, from the very beginning, the strongest part of us all. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button on my channel. I promise to bring you videos every single day that will bring a little more happiness to your life. Leave a comment letting me know what you thought of my story by rating it from 0 to 10, and thank you so much for watching.